Haha, welcome. So we just got done watching. Well, I'm about halfway done between this interview discourse between Jack Dorsey and Edward Snowden. It's interesting because I've always had a fairly deep intuition that I was aligned, like that Edward Snowden understood something fairly profound about how, like, what is good and how to operate truthfully. And I was listening to him in this interview, and this is the first time where there was like consistently I heard things that like directly mapped onto my experience. And maybe it's like a stage that I'm at where I like previously could vaguely grasp it, and now like I've lived it and like I know it's true. So one of them is he's talking about how it appears that many people think government is happening to us. And he equated it to a natural disaster. And I talked about this in my last video where there's kind of this relinquishing, not kind of, there is a relinquishing of agency that I see in most people, where hands off, someone else will do it. Oh, it couldn't be me. I couldn't, like they literally cannot fathom, their imagination will not allow them to be empowered like that, to be an agent of change. To like dream bigger, to dream more empowered. So that's one. The next one is, I find it interesting he said passwords need to be simplified. So I'm thinking about memetics, I'm thinking about heuristics, and I'm thinking about the omega point or singularity, that we're expanding somehow and contracting at the same time. That, you have to have these 64 character, auto-generated keys, and then that somehow we're going to take and contract that into this like singular like object, into like essentially, well, I'm thinking about a hyper object that like you suddenly can just like submit duck or something like that, or like it is a physically tangible object. I suspect that there's the what I'm describing here is very similar to Jim Morris's, like from The Doors, when he was talking about, there's this little clip where he's talking about how he predicts that there'll be like a singular person who's like in front of the stage using a computer, like doing music, and that like that will be the future of music. And I think that I simply like, he kind of got the general idea, and like that didn't quite exist yet. Like they didn't understand, like Skrillex didn't exist yet. And so that was just like really hard to wrap one's mind around. And what I'm describing here is similar, where the idea of like there being an object of duck or something that like fulfills your password, but that it is an object that you submit like a thing rather than like an idea. I don't know. Huh. You submit an idea over, I don't know. It's I get it. I get a similar intuition there. I also find it interesting. There was an alluding to discovering truth on blockchain, how to verify truth. And yeah, this has to have been talked about before, where you have like, it appears that we're converging on truth, that like there's this consensus model being built in reality that's converging. Its attracting force, or its optimum, is truth. And that will instantiate singularity, is that there's like maximum expansion and maximum contraction. Oh my God, that has to be it. Is that there's like that both aspects get go hyperbolic, or go what's it called in the graph where it goes like that, right? It's that it converges on 0 or converges on 1, or that it converges on both 0 and 1 at the same time, which is super similar to the toroidal shape. Like you have like feminine, masculine on either side, yin yang, et cetera, and that they like both like begin to merge into each other. And like that's again probably the cyclical nature of reality right there, is that we're right on the precipice of those two going exponential. That was the term I was thinking of, where they're just like they're about to merge with one another, where there's no distinction between infinite expansion and infinite contraction. Super interesting to hear Jack Dorsey talk about the downfalls of Twitter with advertising model and revenue models, and how initially there was this beauty of playground and simplicity and weirdness at Twitter. Huh. It's interesting that like you put yourself in, you give yourself constraints by like making promises to people about, oh, like we'll improve the value of this company. And by giving yourself constraints, you also serve a function. And when your function becomes so recursive, so beholden, so bogged down, then it fails. Like it runs itself into the ground. And the fine tuning of having the ability to break constraints, maybe having the wisdom to know how much constraint and how much freedom something needs to continue to function. So this ties into the infinite game idea, or continuing to be in flow, that you recognize when something is dysfunctional and you're able to be self-reflective and like modify it, course correct within flight, within operation, self-modifying. Talked a lot in Vibe Cafe today about curiosity, cultivating curiosity, and how that essentially I'm going to make a loose hypothesis, and it seems to be more true and true as I examine it, because I've thought about it before, which is if you are radically curious, essentially that would be the optimal like operating system. That if you move through life being curious, then problems can be metabolized and truth can be revealed more effectively because it opens you up to as many possibility or like solution. The solution space is expanded when you are curious. You become open to all possibilities. Interesting again. There you are again with expansion and contraction, where you open yourself to all possibility space and it converges on a singular solution that like that the truth is self-evident or the solution is self-evident. In the last video, I talked a little bit about the process of like waking up, and like initially you'll have, you're kind of terrified by the magnitude of the global problem space. And I want to throw on a little extra piece, which is like we recently hosted a space in the Vibe Cafe, and it became evident, as it has before, re-evident, maybe, if that's a word, about the inclusion part of like, particularly women, it appears, that we were reflecting on it, and it seems like there's like intelligence may be a daunting aspect of a person, where maybe historically women have not got to participate in like, or have gotten to participate less in highly and intellectual spaces. And so, or not been included in that. And so as a result, at this point in time in history, it can be daunting for women to interface with people who exist in that space. Like, particularly, the way it comes up for me is that I talked with Batty. I've talked with her in the past about like fractals and like mathematics and stuff, and it seemed to kind of, she communicated that it wasn't clear what I was trying to communicate. Like, she didn't understand that, or didn't feel like she completely understood that. And I don't know how to communicate this one exactly. It's a tough one. I'm trying, at the essence of it, is that drawing back into what I'm ultimately would love to be is someone who is patient and like wants to invite people to be more curious, and that I'm trying to refine my way of expressing that without coming off as overwhelming or daunting or something of that nature. And that a critical piece is understanding what the feminine experience is, or trying to come into that experience, to feel that, to be that. Yeah, I'm finding it's interesting right now. I'm finding myself getting into like kind of feeling like I'm getting stuck in some sort of like metaphorical mud right now. And like making my attempt to come back into what is the core value of like what I would be trying to communicate, that I'm trying to be open and honest and authentic, and trying to relate and be inclusive. That's at the essence of it. And then how I can expand it. I guess why I might feel stuck in mud is because I'm putting forward a theory that I'm not sure about. I'm merely hypothesizing that, or trying to put myself into the position of another that I may not be able to understand sufficiently. And being open to the possibility that I'm wrong, that I'm mistaken. That mud feeling, that metaphor is like, it's not knowing space. Like I am in uncertainty, maybe. That like, and like being well, one for sure, being okay with that it's okay, and that I'm just making an attempt, that is a valid exploration, that I can attempt to understand another's perspective. Anyway, it's very challenging. It appears it's challenging to find women who are interested in the online space, like I seem to find many men. And again, my theory is that men have been, I don't know what you call it, socially engineered, or I don't know about indoctrinated. That's kind of a heavy word. The social zeitgeist has prepared men for that more. That there's like this analytical way of moving, or like to interact with each other, a systems engineering space generally is what brings men into that. and you see the high level of like YouTube users are mostly male. So you know that males are more so online in some regard. Are men just like the like coming online sooner than women because it can't be one answer. I mean, it will be a multitude of answers, of course. Huh. A multitude. Like somebody has to do it first. I mean, like, who was the first? What gender was the first, like, amphibian or whatever animal that popped out of the water and said, "Ooh, I could maybe walk on land"? I mean, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. It's just like the way it's worked thus far. I mean, who knows? It very well could have been feminine. But then you would see like the that men are in the risk taking, like that's generally the way men function is like more seeking novelty and like open to like thrill. Like online space, what is that? It's this uncharted ethereal place, right? Like I guess in that regard, it's not surprising that you see a higher level of males. It's not because, so as to say, in Vibe Cafe, you're going to mostly find males, yes, and they're radically open to like everyone. Everyone can be a part of that space. It's just like there's not very many women who have like reached through and like seeked so much novelty that they've just found themselves there. Like you don't end up in Vibe Cafe by coincidence, is what I'm trying to say. It's like it's not something you just stumble into. So maybe it'll take time. Maybe. Who knows? We're talking it through. Maybe we adopt some new practices and that can be more inviting space. Maybe. Open to that possibility. Curious to see if it works out that way. I think that's all I got today. And as always, I love you. Goodbye.